Hi, everyone. Welcome to Target Practice, a podcast about great managers, interesting data, and important decisions. I'm Lior Gerson, CEO of Targetboard AI. Every episode, I'm going to sit down with great leaders from across the industry and talk about how they think, decide, and make decisions. Today, we have with us Jonny Steel. Jonny was the CMO of Payoneer during their hypergrowth period and is widely regarded as one of the leading marketing experts in our field. Great guy. In fact, I think that if you ask anybody who's ever known him or spoken with him, he'll tell you he's a great guy. So, Jonny, super excited to have you here, and thanks for participating in this first episode.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be your first.
It's an honor. Well, first question. So, Jonny, you had like a super impressive career. What are you most proud of?
Well, given that I started my career at my supermarket with none other than you, Lior Gerson, it would be rude not to mention that I had took great pride in building my supermarket, building out the business side of it together with you and the rest of the team back in those early days of e-commerce and comparison websites. I think if I had to put my finger on the proudest career achievement, I would say it has to be with, as you mentioned before, Payoneer. I spent 9 years at Payoneer, and it was a journey in which we really built out a truly global go-to-market. When I joined the company, it was still very much centralized between New York and Tel Aviv, and we built something out that could really connect with small business customers all over the world. So putting people on the ground in more than 20 locations worldwide, launching these new offices, building out new product lines and taking it to market, and actually being part of a truly global success story, taking the company public in 2021 and continuing as a high growth public company. It's hard to kind of pinpoint one moment along that 9-year journey, but really being part of a story that ends in such a truly sort of global brand, I think, is something that is a very unique experience, down to a strong team, good market conditions, a little bit of luck, but a journey that I'm very, very proud to have been a part of.
There are very few people who can claim, doing what you've done there. If you had to, try and pick like one moment where you said like, this is going to be really hard, it might not work, and it did work, like, what would that be? A moment where you said, well, wow.
I think it really came down to making that leap of faith that in order to really connect with small businesses worldwide, we weren't able to do that from centralized offices with one sort of global central go-to market, that we really had to start to bring on board team members around the world that had the local market expertise and trust them, give them the opportunity to make decisions, to use their budgets wisely according to how they knew best, set up frameworks to allow them to be able to be successful and have the support of the centralized functions, but ultimately to be able to make decisions on their own. And I think that's something that, we stumbled a bit at the beginning of, like, were we really willing to make those investments, significant investments, take significant risks to do that? But ultimately, there was no other way to be able to build a solid brand and a strong business that could endure in markets such as China, which are notoriously difficult for Western companies to get success and to remain in.
It's crazy. Now, in retrospective, all these huge bets that paid off, were there any that, were a mistake, that you said, well, but we probably shouldn't have done that?
I think you make mistakes the whole time. You make micro mistakes and mega mistakes in a journey such as that. And I think I never really necessarily viewed these things as mistakes. I think, the word mistake makes it sound like, okay, with greater consideration or planning, it was avoidable. But actually, people that are not taking risks and not making bets and not acting are probably not the people that are going to be able to drive a business to true success. So everything is always a learning opportunity. It only really becomes, in my eyes, a true mistake if you did it, it failed, and you did it again. And there were very few of those, I think, that I can put my finger on. I think one of the major things that I would say is that, especially as a pretty big global financial services company, there are times along the way where things don't go right. Whether that's because of a technical error or an operational error, a misjudgment, you were let down by one of your partners that your infrastructure is built on. And you see this in the media the whole time of companies that downtime, a failure or something that's affected the company. We had those along the way, and that happens. That's part of business. But one thing I discovered along the way from the marketing and the communications perspective is about communication during a crisis, communication during a problem. And often what we try to do at the beginning is, well, let's hang on, let's really try and understand all the facts. Let's really try and understand exactly what's happening and work out what our plan is going to be in order to address it. And then we'll communicate. And sometimes that can be a gap of a few hours. It could even be a gap of a day or even a couple of days. And you see companies that face a crisis that get paralyzed by it whilst they're trying to figure it out. And I think there were times where I made that mistake of just trying to be a little bit too cautious, of waiting to know everything before we communicated something. And whenever you don't communicate in a situation like that, you end up with a situation in which that gap of your lack of communication will get filled by rumors, by speculation from your customers and from the market. And generally speaking, the rumors and the speculation are going to be significantly worse than the reality. And so that was something I learned, from one or two of those occasions where as soon as something has happened like that, you have to act. You go out there, you communicate what you do know, and you make it very clear that you're taking it extremely seriously. And we got better at doing that using social media, using the website, using our CRM to make sure that when there were those little issues along the way, or big issues along the way, that we were very much seen as being in control of the situation, communicating regularly until the issue is resolved.
It pays to be proactive.
You can't sit around, and in today's day and age, I mean, we saw this I think it was in October, where there was a downtime from AWS, which affected a bunch of different apps. I mean, my team here use Canva, rely on Canva really for day-to-day work. Canva's gone down, and you think, okay, how are they communicating this? And I look at this with a very critical eye, because at the beginning you start to wonder, wait, is it just Canva that's gone down? Is there some kind of a DDoS attack, or is there cyber issues? What about all my data that's on this platform? Is it a risk? So you start to, in a situation like that, really worry. And it comes down to how actively and proactively they communicate in the minute. The last thing you want is your customers going to X to discover from what other people are saying as to what's really going on. You really want to be able to hear that information, almost before you discover the problem, before you even arrive at work and open your laptop, to know that there's an issue and it's being handled, and this is what's going to be.
Yep. Cool. So, next question. Did you encounter any situation where having the right data at the right time made a big impact on the decisions that you made?
Yeah, so this is probably a good opportunity for me to mention the company that I'm at now. So for most of this year, I've been working as the CMO of a young startup called Linguana. We work in the creator economy, working with creators to grow their global reach and revenue. So YouTubers with successful channels, we localize their channel, we dub their channels, we take it out, distribute it on other platforms, we generate revenues from it, and we split the revenues with our customers. And one of the things that we found when building out localized channels, so let's say, for example, Targetboard has a successful YouTube channel with lots of video content about data and how to use data most effectively. And it's all in English, and you want to tackle Latin America. So for that, your content must be in Spanish and Portuguese. And so what we do is we would take that channel and would build you 2 more channels in Spanish and Portuguese. But what we often find, and this is where the right data really did have an impact, is that you might have a back catalog. So you might have 50 or 100 videos you've already made that are very successful and people keep coming to them. So when we started up those channels, it wasn't obvious to us, okay, what do we post? Do we post all 50 in one go? Do we post some of them and spread it over time? And so at the beginning, we just did it more or less randomly. Then with the right data, we were able to understand, okay, well, what seems to be picking up traction at what time? And so that's where you understand there's trends, right? So if there are things that are in the news, Google Trends and stuff like that, this video might be super impactful if we post it at a certain time. There's some things that are time sensitive that they might relate to periods of the year. And so using data, we built a predictive engine to help tell us which videos should we post in which language at which time. And that way we were able to get the biggest bang for our buck, because always when you post a new video, that's when you tend to get the most traffic, is in the first few days or few weeks or few months is when you get the most impact. So being able to use data to target those videos on the right channels at the right time really made a huge difference in getting those channels to take off quickly.
It's crazy. It's super cool. Now, what about the flip side? Like, was there like a situation where you said, well, you know what, I really need this data. It could really help me, but you weren't able to get it to, either validate or invalidate, a thesis that you had?
Yeah, I think marketing professionals struggle with this the whole time, and it's in 20 years in the profession, I still see it as a challenge, which is attribution. Is understanding the customers that you're bringing in, understanding which campaigns have brought them in, what efforts and resources have you been putting in that are actually having the biggest impact. And there's lots of different ways to look at attribution. And in an early stage startup, you often are running and firing all directions. You don't really care so much about how they come in or where they come from, as long as they're coming through the door and you've got new customers signing up. But what we were finding is at the beginning we had very little attribution. We started to fix some of the basic elements so that we at least had UTMs from our campaigns. We could see how much of it was coming just directly through the website, how much was coming through various paid campaigns, social media partnerships. So we got that bit in place. But this sounds like really, really dumb. But we understood that there was a power in word of mouth that was going on in our industry, and that there were people coming to us, but it was hard to be able to identify, how much that was happening, because a lot of the time it might be offline. And so we just simply added to our form one question when somebody's applying to join Linguana, which is, where did you hear about us? And we decided to intentionally leave that as an open field that you didn't have to select from a bunch of options. You could write whatever you wanted. And we figured, as many applications as we have, this is important data for us to get. We'll read it, we'll break it down, we'll use AI to bring some analytics out of it. And as soon as we added that, we got this extra elements. Even when they came through a Google campaign or they came directly to the website, often that field would reveal far more about what was going on. And that's where we really got a full understanding of the power of word of mouth, that so often people were saying, they came through Google, but they were referred from a friend, another creator. And that was actually the trigger, once we got that, to rapidly launch a referral program, friend bring a friend, refer a friend program, because as soon as we saw that this was going on without us putting any incentivization behind it, there was no incentive to do it. We thought, okay, if we offer them some money to bring in their friends, it's going to supercharge that. And that's a good example of, like, we were totally missing that data, and the traditional methods weren't really showing us the true story. And just something as dumb as a "where did you hear about us?" question told us the answer.
I feel the next thing I have to do after this call is go and launch our cool. So, we have to talk about AI, right? So
Yeah.
AI in marketing, right? There's the obvious of, content creation, all of that. Like, what are you most excited about?
I think, like, it's a big topic in the creator economy at the moment that people are really talking about, and it starts, I think, often from fear of, hold on a second, all these creators that are out there been doing amazing things, totally original, breaking boundaries, and putting out such unique content to the world, that are fearing, wait a sec, isn't AI just going to replace this entirely? And I think more and more they're seeing that actually the difference today is it's not a question of creators or AI, it's creators that use AI versus creators that are not effectively using AI. And that's the biggest difference. So, in terms of, what's real here is that, like, AI is transforming workflows, and those creators that are understanding, okay, how do they utilize the AI tools in order to improve scripting, thumbnail design as an example, translations and dubbing, that's where we come into the picture. These are all, super powerful things that can either allow them to do things faster or cheaper or better than they were doing manually beforehand. What we see, I think, still is that the element of creativity is still something that AI is a tool that can help with the creative process, but it doesn't seem to be showing signs of being able to truly replace what amazing creators can do. And that's why the creators that are using AI and that still have this spark about them of originality is something that I think that's where AI hits the wall, and the humans still have a role to play.
Yeah, very cool. I started thinking about AI as like paper in offices, where it's going to be like everywhere, but it's just like, a tool that you use for a lot of things. It doesn't like you can run your business sort of without it. It's just going to be much harder, right? You have to get some stone tablets or something.
You need more people. I mean, if someone has been in the industry for a while, I was managing large teams in the last two organizations that I worked in for the last decade. I managed very large marketing teams, and a lot of that was marketing, the operations of marketing, content writers, posting on social media, building CRM campaigns, etc. And this is the first time for a long time that I'm a marketing team of one at the moment. We're 30 people in the startup. We have one, and this is it. This is the marketing team, me. I have a couple of freelancers. I have a couple of outside agencies that support me with my work. But really, so much of what used to take several stages and several people, with the right tools and knowing how to use the tools effectively, you're able to do so much more. I see it as well with our sales. What used to be a large team of sales development reps is now, so much of it can be done through really smart AI campaigns to do the outbound. And that way we're able to reach so many more creators, give them the messaging, the information they need when they respond, to be able to answer those questions and meet their needs. And really, far fewer people are able to be far more productive with the tools that are out there today.
So essentially, like a very different distribution of the budget, right? So campaigns.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's something that think in the past, part of growth, of like showing you're a growing business, you might boast to your friends about, we've raised this amount of money. Oh, that's very impressive. Or we've grown revenues by such and such over the year. That's very impressive. But people also used to boast about the team, right? Oh, we've doubled our team. We've passed 100 people. We passed 1,000 people. And I think that was a boast, because it was a measure of, this is a company that's in growth mode if they've got so many people. And I think that's starting to become something of the past, that you can have a real impact and be profitable and be growing rapidly without necessarily needing such a huge team. But it's about having the right people. You can't just have fewer people. You have to have people with the right skills. And I think for those of us that have been doing this for a while, it's about upskilling the whole time. Like, you can become redundant as a worker pretty quickly if you continue sticking to the old playbooks. And so this is pressure on everybody to be learning to use the technology appropriately.
Absolutely. So last question. If you had to pick one metric that would be super valuable, for starting CMOs or for growing CMOs, that is sort of, underappreciated or overlooked, what would that be?
I think at the very beginning, when you're starting out, so what are you looking at? You're looking at growth. So you might be looking at customer acquisition, or the the value of the contracts that you're signing with your customers, frequency that they're buying from you. So these are sorts of like core metrics that you look at. And in our world, we're onboarding these creators. So we're looking at the number of creators we're onboarding. We would be looking at the channels, how many channels we've launched for them, how many of those channels have monetized, so they're generating revenues for the creator. And those are the typical metrics that we would look at as a sign of success, of like, okay, we've got lots of channels live and lots of channels that are generating revenue. And as time has passed a bit, I've started to understand something, which is maybe an unlikely answer to a question on a podcast, which is primarily about data, is like the time from first touch to the wow moment. And what I mean by the wow moment is that sometimes it's not easy to pinpoint exactly when the wow moment comes, because sometimes you've got the customer signs a contract and they start using, and you've got a bunch of different metrics that signal to you that, okay, this customer is using you, is getting value from you, but you haven't necessarily reached the wow moment. And I've seen the wow moment happen for us at different points. I think it's something we need to fine tune, but it's that moment where the customer is finally reached that point of not only seeing value from what you're offering to them, your product, your service, but they are now delighted by the fact that they've bought in on you. And sometimes that comes from, a breakthrough moment, or like the realization that this is a game changer for them or something. And we've seen that where, sometimes for us it's about the speed of growth, the speed of views coming in, and a creator that's been creating in English for the last 10 years, and they start working with us, and then within 1 month they've got 10 new channels, and they've seen it monetize, each one of them monetize, and you group it together and show how many you've actually doubled your audience of viewers. And you think that's a wow moment when you can put it in terms like that of, I've spent 10 years building up my audience, building this great content, and suddenly I've signed a partnership that within a month, within 2 months, has doubled the size of my global audience. Wow, this is unbelievable. And I think like that time to the wow moment, there are times where it takes longer to get there, and to be able to identify what is that wow moment. I think that's a metric that is something that, when you get there, if you understand how to get to that point quickly, what the wow is and how to get there quickly, that's one of the things that really powers word of mouth, because people love to talk about something that wowed them. They're less likely to talk about something that's just like running and doing its thing.
Jonny, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and super interesting. It's great seeing you.
Thank you for having me on.
So that's it for today's episode of Target Practice. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe. Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you next time.